Hold on. We didn't go the route of gasoline? Oh, wait, we did. Oh, that sounds terrible. Here's the deal. When it comes down to it, we have been here before. We've been at this crossroads where we're at right now with EV and gasoline. The thing is, though, is that, well, history is commonly forgotten. And I decided to go ahead and dig up something pretty interesting here. You see, there was once a time when we stood at this crossroads of deciding what is going to be best for our future. Is it going to be gasoline? Is it going to be steam? Now, I kid you not, the more I researched this, the more I started to realize that we may have gone the wrong direction. And the statistics on these things are absolutely just bonkers. You see, we stood there, boiler hissing, gauges trembling, all that fun stuff, and we were looking at a steampunkian future that we just wrote off. And in many ways, I have to say that I'm kind of disappointed in humanity for this one, because when it came down to it, we would have the most efficient vehicles. Environmental friendliness wouldn't even be a topic because these things were awesome. So let's dive on in. When it comes down to these were powerful. They were clean. They were awesome. It's going to get steamy up in here. Let's do this thing. It's a brisk Thursday morning. You shuffle out your front door. You walk over to your beautiful vehicle with your cup of coffee in hand, your scarf wrapped around your face. And as you're looking at your beautiful not gas guzzler that is definitely not going to be the silent vehicle gliding down the road, you realize, crap, the boiler's almost frozen. So you go ahead and you grab your box of matches and you start to get those coals or kerosene going under that boiler. And as the boiler unfreezes 10 to 30 minutes later, you finally realize my coffee is gone and now I need to commute to work late. This was a reality. In the 18th century, cars were primarily powered by steam. And here's kind of one of the very interesting parts about it. The automotive industry had a dream. It was steam powered, it was brass covered, it was a gear clicking awesomeness. Thing was, is that that dream was cast aside fairly quickly when gasoline came on, and it kind of makes sense as to why. Because human beings, we like our convenience. So why not go that direction? Well, there's a lot of reasons that we may have actually chosen the wrong direction here. And so let's start at the beginning. You see, there was a gentleman, a Frenchman in the military. He was an engineer, and his name was Joseph Nicolas Cugnot. Now, Joseph Nicolas, he was tasked with creating something that could help out on the battlefield, right? And so he went ahead and created something that was equally parts genius and also, questionable judgment. This thing was it was hideous. It looked like a massive steam powered locomotive, and like crossed with like an angry wheelbarrow. It was craziness. But the thing is that he figured out a way to make a vehicle that not only had the turning radius of a 747 wingspan, but also how to make something that could pull massive amounts of weight on the battlefield. Now, when it comes on the fuel efficiency, this thing was obviously, prototype 0001. This thing was not awesome. And it was 1769. I mean, the tech that they had at the time wasn't really up to, let's make it run forever kind of spec. But here's the thing. It had a top speed that was roughly equivalent to a leisurely walk. Not very quick. And at the same time, the dude crashed it into a wall. But cool thing with this is that not only did he create one of the first automobiles that actually had the ability to propel itself, on its own locomotion, but he also had the first documented automobile accident in history. So, I think that's kind of cool. But Steam wasn't deterred by some engineer that was just kind of tinkering around trying to build trying to build one of the first, military vehicles. What did happen though was in the late 1800s, steam It built up a swagger, and companies like Stanley and White were building these remarkable steam-powered cars. They were transforming the transportation landscape, giving people now the ability to go, "Hey, horse and buggy," or maybe just buggy. And these things weren't just quaint novelties. I mean, what Stanley Steamer built back in the day, yes, Stanley Steamer, built back in the day was amazing. This thing was a speed demon, and even for today, some manufacturers limit their vehicles so they can't go this fast. But back in 1906, Stanley Steamer smashed a land speed record, which was probably held by a horse at the time. I didn't quite look it up, but that's kind of what I assume. The thing is, they went 127 miles an hour in this thing, right? I mean, just imagine. The gentleman's hat just flying off as he's unprepared when he hits the accelerator on one of these things. And horses looking as this thing goes by, questioning their employment. The thing is that on the horizon, we were ready to make this switch to full on locomotion, full on propulsion. And the road was literally right there. And we abandoned this technology. So the fuel efficiency on them was also kind of funny. So with this, driving a steam car meant constant water fill-ups. So every about 30 to 50 miles, you're kind of patiently and impatiently going ahead and waiting for the boiler to cool down. And then you had to wait for this thing to fill back up. And early models required igniting the pilot flame beneath the boiler by hand and waiting a nerve-wracking 30 minutes for the boiler to go ahead and heat up so you can go another 30 to 50 miles. Now, this wasn't the perfect scenario at all. This was a no-go option at this point in time. I mean, this was worse than, let's say, like EV coming into the United States and getting like 50 miles, of range, and nobody is going to accept that, right? So we had to put more range on them, and eventually people, are going, oh yeah, not a problem. But with Steam, when they came up with a solution for further range, this was amazing, right? So enter Abner Doble. Now, Abner Doble, he's the steam-powered marvel. I mean, engineer of sorts. The Doble steam car came on the scene and was an absolute game changer for people that were looking at these things. Even though you had the Stanley Steamer out there that was like crazy fast, right, 127 miles an hour, it still took half an hour to get rolling. The Doble here, this particular thing, it took 30 seconds to get up and running, right? Accelerates smoothly. It didn't have a gearbox, right? Travel, get this, the fuel economy, 1,500 miles before it needed a water refill. Yeah, this guy went ahead and created this ingenious system that allowed the vehicle to recirculate its steam and be able to have it be used many times over, right? This is what blows me away about this, is that if we created a system today similar to this, a closed loop kind of steam powered system, and put an electric motor on it and put a big battery in there, we would very easily be able to go ahead and have vehicles that could run on actual water from a hose from your house. But we abandoned the technology. Imagine what the technology would look like 200 years on. This is one of those things that I find fascinating about the automotive industry, is that we simply abandoned it, walked away, when its fuel efficiency was 1,500 miles per tank of water. I don't know. It's a slight shock because, when you go ahead and you take a look at these, it's like we're perfectly fine filling these things up with fuel every day. But when it comes down to the history, we almost had the ability to not just get, let's say, 300 or 400 miles for, $8 or $10 to fill up our EV out of our house, or, $50 to $90 to go 400 to 500 miles in our gas-powered car. We almost had the ability to simply fill our vehicle up with a few gallons of water, and next thing you know, you are going many, 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 many miles. But, sadly, reality struck these things because the price tags were like absolutely insane. I mean, these things were complicated. But again, imagine if we kept working on them. I'm just saying, they could have had a life with us. So this kind of invention, it made gasoline just look, super, super easy, like embarrassingly primitive, because all you had to do with a gasoline car, go ahead, crank it in the front a couple times, it's up, it's running, and you're off to the races. Literally. Henry Ford came on the scene, and the gasoline, powered Model T hit, and it was so much cheaper. It was simpler to run. It could be produced mass market, very, very easily, whereas steam had to go through a lot of processes, and some of them were just straight up bravery, where they build the vehicle and you fill it up, you heat up the boiler, and you kind of hope the darn thing doesn't explode. And sad to say, I'm pretty sure during their quality control test, they probably had a couple people die, simply because the tanks weren't always perfect. And you also ran that risk as well if you get stuck on the interstate, right? So you get stuck on the interstate, not much water left in the thing, it overheats, boom, it explodes. So it had some issues, but when that Model T came on, those issues went away, right? Steam powered just evaporated. It was gone, right? The risk of injury, the risk of death, the risk of setting yourself on fire, the risk of exploding boilers all went away. Convenience killed the Steam Star. But there's just that itch of what if? What if this thing could have come along, right? So let's indulge ourselves for a second. All right. Let's say Steam actually won, right? Fast forward to today. It's 7 a.m., right? Your smartphone buzzes with a notification that, hey, the boiler pressure's ready, right? Just like all these apps we have for our cars. You grab your leather driving goggles, you walk outside, because why wouldn't you have awesome leather driving goggles? I mean, your car's like all covered in copper chrome awesomeness. You step into your driveway, you admire your stunning neon lit brass coppered steampunk sedan, and then you get in. There's no gas stations on your commute. None whatsoever. Instead, elegant Victorian-style water cafes, they were being called, line the streets, right, serving artisanal coffee and distilled water. Your morning rush hour isn't honking. It's not a fume-filled nightmare, but rather a leisurely parade of polished brass cars gently puffing steam into the crisp morning air. Gridlock, it isn't irritating. Actually, it's relaxing, simply because people are sipping tea. You're trading boiler maintenance tips as they're moving at 2 miles an hour down the Atlanta freeway, right? And, they're casually, discussing steam pressure. And why wouldn't you? I mean, it changes from day to day as that temperature moves around. It's a great topic to have. Mechanics wouldn't just be mechanics. Mechanics would actually be considered more along the lines of master steam engineers, sporting wax mustaches and monocles and waistcoats. The thing is that the world would have been very different. Our service stations and our dealerships would look entirely strange to us today. But forget things like computerized diagnostics. They just wouldn't be around, right? Your car wouldn't need servicing for this, for these weird sounds quite as much. Actually, it would be far scarier. You would have a hissing sound and then a boom sound. So as far as, I guess, going ahead and concerning yourself with little trivial things like that, really isn't that big of a concern. So you just go get a new car, essentially. But safety features, forget airbags, right? Your biggest worry is that accidental boiler pressure, just going into overload mode and having an impromptu roadside espresso party. While all those drivers are looking at you going, dude, you should have put water in it this morning. You just blew up a big hole in the road. Not cool. But now we got something to talk about as we're stuck here, as all the rest of us are burning up all of the steam. But here's the coolest part, all right? Embracing steam early could have meant a lot significantly less pollution. No matter what side of the fence you sit on with all of this stuff, I have yet to see anybody go ahead and take anybody up on wrapping their mouth around an exhaust pipe for like $5. We know that a gasoline-powered car is not efficient, and it ain't good for the environment. No matter what way we look at that. Coming from somebody that drives a diesel, I can tell you, when it comes to EV, it just makes sense. But when it comes to steam, this makes way too much sense. Because as time progresses, we always update technology. And we always upgrade it to the point where we make it efficient and we become happy with it. And it improves our lives in ways that make us want more of it. The iPhone's a great example, to iPad, to everything else that Apple's got going on. The deal is that when technology is perfected, it becomes addicting. When you have something like this that gives us the ability to have, that it could have been quieter, right? Could have been far cleaner, right? Oddly, more comfortable to drive, and at the same time, without the effect on the ecosystem, This is crazy. So, why did we actually abandon it? Well, all the stuff that I said before, it's all true. When it came down to these things, they weren't safe at the time. And safety was the main thing that made people run away from them. We say that, well, the auto cycle engine purely just won because Nicholas Otto had all this money. That is very true, right? And Daimler helped a lot. But the reason that Steam won is because people are dying or getting hurt or getting burned or being very late for everything that they needed to do in their lives. But once these things got up and moving, they were awesome. So let's snap out on that fantasy real quick. Yes, Steam ultimately lost the race. But thinking about what could have been helps us understand our reaction to new technologies, right? So next time somebody scoffs at like an electric car or hydrogen fuel cell, remind them everything sounds insane until it's your daily driver. Once you have to live that life, everything changes. Because if you went ahead and you bought a vehicle today and it drove on just purely water, question, where would you fill it up? Because that's what EV people ask all the time. When they walk through a building that has 300 plugs, where do you fill it up? Now, let's be real. Steam powered cars, they're long gone. But the legacy of them is absolutely critical for us to understand. Technology is under constant evolution, and it's not stopping. And in today's weird and inconvenient tech phase, where we have electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that are coming on, and even autonomous cars that are slowly going to start coming on in big force in the next few years, all of this might seem challenging now, but learning of what history has to tell us lets us know that number one, A, we can pull this stuff off. Number two, we can have confidence that the customer that we're working with can start to understand it and that there's a chance that they can learn it. Keep in mind, things like time and features and functions are the number one biggest crushers, and number two, on your surveys. If you can make people understand simple technologies, right? Because you know how to use them. Now, all of a sudden, you can change people's minds on how they feel about their products, and your surveys instantly become better. People trust you more too. But as far as this goes, steam powered cars, they remind us of a critical truth, right? Today's crazy idea might just actually be tomorrow's normal. And it wouldn't hurt us every so often to just kind of go ahead and be okay with that, right? Be able to look at the world through maybe a slightly different lens. Because when it comes down to things like EV, when it comes down to things like hydrogen, when it comes down to things like, well, anything that's more efficient, or if somebody actually does come out with a steam powered hybrid, which I think would just be bonkers awesome. Heck, I'd buy it. Our open mindedness is going to lead us to allow customers to have a better experience when they're sitting down in front of us. Because our beliefs in what a vehicle might be, or what it should be, or what it should do, or how it should perform, the customer doesn't care. What the customer does care about is getting their dreams fulfilled. And whether it's you looking at this thing going, yeah, Andy's kind of onto something with that steam powered vehicle thing, but yeah, it's never going to happen. Or if you're more along the lines of, well, maybe we should just go ahead and bull in a China shop this thing. You got to remember, if you're working with that customer and they're sitting in front of you, it's their dream we got to fulfill. So if they want something that we're not about, that's okay. Just show them a good time. It's not about us. The commission check is. And when we put the customer before the commission, we always win. And when we win, the commission checks are always bigger because people like us more. So, as far as this goes, that's the story of the steampunk car. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we're going to be bringing it back on into a couple little sales skills, and we're going to be talking a bit more about how kindness in certain parts of the sales process goes a long way. And we're going to bring this idea of improving the customer experience to the forefront. I know, right now it sounds like, oh man, nothing cool for next week. Trust me, I'm going to build it around a very cool topic. But it really comes down to the fact of when people are happier, they spend more money. When they get what they want, they spend a lot more money. And when they're really happy, not only do they spend more money, but they tell other friends and family for years to come. So get out there, start selling those cars. Get out there, start spreading that kindness. Get out there and start showing customers that you care about them more than you care about the commission. I will talk to you later.